Mama, welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous! Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Hey Mama, welcome back to the podcast. Happy belated Mother's Day. If you are in the UK, we would have had our Mother's Day this weekend. And in true societal fashion, we've also lost an hour of sleep. As a thank you to all the mums, we've lost an hour of sleep this weekend. So that was fun. But I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day anyway. I certainly did. Again, the best moments are lived offline, and it was awesome. It was amazing. And so one of the other things I did on the weekend was I had my first Instagram live. I don't know whether you follow me on Instagram. If you don't, I am at Mrs. Mummy PhD. I'd love for you to follow me there. But I did my first Instagram live. As you know, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media. I'm well aware that most of you found me via social media, and I'm, eternally grateful for that. But it's not my favorite thing. I really don't love it, but I know that it's one way of getting this message out there and being able to help and meet amazing mamas like yourself. And, I give thanks for that. And I don't take that privilege for granted. And so I am embracing it as much as I can with my little introverted self. And one of the reasons why I am embracing it in that way is because I've realized that it's not about me. This is not about me. This is about helping you to finish well, helping you to get through your PhD journey, your scholarly journey, and to get to the other side of that without sacrificing what matters most. So that is the real importance of what we do here, the mission and the purpose of what this is all about. And so I am so grateful that you have found me there, if that's where you found me, and continue to tune into this podcast every week. So I give so much thanks for that. One of the amazing things about being on social media is the connections that I have been able to make and the friendships that I have established. And I met up with a very good friend of mine that I met on Instagram. I think you may have heard her on this podcast before, and I've been on her podcast as well. And she has just become such a supportive friend, and she reached out to meet up. And in that conversation, she mentioned something to me that was really poignant. And this came from, I believe, one of her coaches, but I wanted to share it with you today because it stood out so much in my mind. And I'm sure you've heard me talk on this podcast before about outcomes versus outputs. And I talked about it on the Instagram live on the weekend as well, because this is a concept that I have adopted myself. It has really transformed my thinking about my PhD journey, and I hope that it will do the same for you. So in my conversation with my good friend, we were talking about this idea of fishing versus farming. And if you remember, I was talking about outcomes versus outputs. I believe that outputs are those kind of tangible, measurable things like your thesis, your title, your publications, your conference visits, conference presentations, abstracts, whatever, all the things that you may do, the amount of courses that you've taught or what have you, those are all like measurable results. Whereas the outcomes for me are much more. This is obviously in the context of scholarly motherhood. Okay, I'm not talking about kind of research conversations and clinical conversations, but in the context of scholarly motherhood, for me, outcomes are very much the inner work that's happening. What personal growth is happening on your PhD journey. And so in this episode, I want to talk about cultivating growth. And I'm going to tie that into the conversation that I had with my good friend, which was around this fishing, farming mentality. But I really wanted to elaborate on it and go a bit deeper. In our conversation, it was just kind of a passing conversation, a 2-minute, probably 1-minute conversation. But I wanted to go deeper into this today in this episode because that conversation really aligned so well with my own concept of outputs versus outcomes in scholarly motherhood. And of course, the idea of being on journeys of becoming and just opening our eyes to wherever that may take us, wherever those journeys may take us. And so again, this powerful analogy that has really reshaped the way that I have thought about success, that I've thought about growth, I've thought about fulfillment in a very different way than I had before. And again, it's this idea of outputs versus outcomes, but it could also be conceptualized as this idea of farming versus fishing. And I know that quite often in our academic and our professional journeys, and even in motherhood, we find ourselves drawn to this allure of immediate results, right? The big catch, the quick win, the immediate gain, the big win, the promotions, all these amazing things, but they feel very immediate. And that for me is the kind of fishing mentality, this idea of having this set target and really seeking to find, like you really want to bring home that catch, this fishing mentality. But what if I told you that real lasting growth comes from this idea of farming? So for me, this is my concept of outcomes, the idea of farming. And the reason why I love this analogy is because it's focused on navigating the unknown, dealing with delayed gratification, dealing with taking an experimental approach to this. So really the idea of planting those seeds, not knowing which ones are going to actually germinate, but nurturing them, watering them, and trusting that in due course, they will bear fruit, right? That they will bear fruit in the future. And so today, I really wanted to dive into this idea of why it matters to adopt a farmer's mindset to really set you up for deeper joy, greater success, more fulfillment as a scholarly mama. So let's talk about the fishing mentality and this pursuit of immediate returns, which we mentioned, those immediate results. Let's talk about this first. So let's start with the idea of fishing. Now, my grandfather, who is sadly passed, he's actually my great-grandfather. He was a fisherman in Barbados. So I grew up in Barbados, as you already know, and we lived very near to the beach. And this is why I relate so much to like Moana, a whole different conversation. But anyway, I grew up really near to the beach, just, a few minutes down the road. My grandfather was a fisherman. He worked and went out on the boats and did fishing. And we enjoyed lots of fish as a family in those years I was growing up. I grew up eating lots of fish. And so I relate to this analogy of, not like I was a fisherman because I've never gone out fishing myself, but I relate growing up on an island, having a grandfather who's a fisherman. I really relate to this. So imagine you are a fisherman and you're going out on the water. You've got everything set up, your nets and your rods and whatever you've got, and you're waiting for the catch. You're waiting for the bite. And when you catch something, so you catch a fish, right? It may be exhilarating for you. It may be a good feeling. It feels like it was worth it. It feels like, yes, I've finally got my target. I've finally caught the fish. But what happens if you don't catch the fish? What happens if you go out there and you are sitting for hours on the sea and you catch nothing? That is possible, right? So how does that make you feel? You go home, you feel like a failure, you feel empty-handed, you think, oh, well, another day, another wasted day out on the sea, doing absolutely nothing, caught nothing. I have no fish to eat today, or I have no fish to sell, or I have nothing. And in many ways, fishing represents this kind of results-driven mindset where success is literally dependent on whether or not you catch the fish. So it's measured by whether or not you catch the fish. This is a tangible outcome. This is the measurable, tangible result. And if you don't have that to show, then what is the point? So obviously doing a PhD, again, that mindset can pop up as well. So this may look like obsessing over, submitting a manuscript for publication or something and getting accepted on the first try. You are like, oh my goodness, I am the best, right? Or maybe it's expecting immediate recognition for some work that you've done. You submitted a draft to your supervisor and how dare they not come back to you the same day with feedback, right? Sarcasm, of course. And again, this idea that you should be getting these immediate results. And as mamas, it may even show up there as well. Like it may mean, hunting for the perfect parenting solution or parenting hack that will just completely transform your child's behavior or something. Or if you're thinking about this in terms of personal development, maybe it's about chasing the quick wins, looking for these like magical productivity tricks and hacks that will just transform your life immediately. And all of a sudden, all of those kind of time management issues and traumas and all the things that are keeping you stuck will just disappear overnight. Like these things they're not realistic expectations, but it's this pull towards getting the quick win, getting the immediate results, getting, the outcome that we want immediately. And fishing, in many ways, this kind of mindset makes us reliant or dependent on seeking that kind of external validation, seeking the what you've got to show for the work you've put in, right? The results, the kind of tangible results that you can show, look what I've got. And, this kind of thinking just makes us impatient, reactive. It just doesn't work. Worst of all, when you don't catch those fish, you could just feel like a complete failure. Like, what was the point? But what if we didn't have to think this way? What if it wasn't just about the output? What if it wasn't just about the titles? What if it wasn't just about the promotion? What if it was more than, the publication? What if it was more than the prestige? What if it was more than the achievements, right? What if instead of constantly searching for this big catch to show for the time you spent out on the sea, what if you learn to actually plant and cultivate growth? And this is where I want to bring in this idea of the farmer's mindset. This is where I want to bring in this idea of focusing more on outcomes rather than the outputs. So this is about planting the seed, watering the seed, nurturing the seed, trusting the process, enjoying the journey of this PhD motherhood walk. What if it was more than just the outputs? So just like we did with the fisherman, I want you to picture yourself as a farmer. Now, I don't have any farmers in my family per se, but my dad is probably the closest that you will get to this. He loves planting, he loves gardening, he loves growing fruit and vegetables, and he absolutely is in his element when he is doing this. So I want you to picture that you are him. You wake up early, you go and you start to prepare the soil, the plant beds, and you start to plant some seeds. Then the next thing is you may start to water them, and you don't expect that the next day when you come out to look at your garden or to water it again, that you've got a plant bearing fruit. You don't expect that. You know that there's a waiting period. You know that planting seeds is a seasonal activity. You know that there's going to be a time for the harvest, but that time isn't right now. That is not an immediate, next step after you've planted your seeds. So you can understand that the real kind of work that needs to be done here is happening beneath the surface. And one of the people that I love listening to, Myron Golden, he talks about this. He talks about where the growth is happening in many ways is in the messy bottom, like the messiness in the roots of the plants, like where you cannot see. That's where a lot of the messy work is happening before you can even begin to grow beyond the surface and up and get to a place where you're bearing fruit and growing and all that stuff. And so that the work has to be done beneath the surface. This is the inner work. This is the inner work we talked about on that live on Instagram over the weekend. The inner work that no one sees. The nurturing, the watering, the personal growth that nobody sees. That is where the real magic is happening. And it certainly is not immediate. This is not an immediate process. This is not an overnight success story. You have to learn to trust the process, right? Trust the journey that this is. Who are you becoming along the way? This is the mindset that I had to cultivate as a scholarly mama. That growth doesn't happen overnight. Success doesn't come the next day. A career isn't built in a day. Meaningful relationships with our kids are not fostered overnight. We need to be present. We need to invest in those relationships. Our relationships with our significant others, they don't happen by chance, right? Those are things that we have to pour into. Those are things that we have to invest into. So when we are thinking about things that are worth having in this life, these are usually things that take time to nurture and take time to grow. And these are the most valuable things. But when we think about these two mindsets, the fishing mindset or the farming mindset, or even when we think about these as outputs versus outcomes, it's really important that we understand the benefits of the farming mindset. So again, what are the benefits of the farming mindset? When you have that mindset, you're willing to try new things. You're willing to take an experimental approach to your Scholarly Mama journey. So just like a farmer may try out different soils or different seeds or different types of things or set up the beds in a different way or what have you, you too will explore different methods. You'll explore different methods in your work, in your parenting, in your self-care. What works, what isn't working, getting really clear on those things and trying new strategies. A farmer doesn't just, plant the seeds, wake up the next day, doesn't see any growth happening and just give up. You stay consistent. You keep watering that plant. So yeah, you have to deal with the elements as well that may throw a few curveballs, but you're committed to staying steady. You're committed to little actions, little micro actions and micro decisions that will compound over time. The other thing is that you are cultivating delayed gratification. This idea that you don't necessarily see immediate results, but it doesn't mean that things aren't happening beneath the surface that you may not be able to see. So embracing that idea of waiting, embracing the fact that life is seasonal, scholarly motherhood is seasonal, right? Embracing the idea of being patient through that, trusting in the seasonality of life. We know that some seasons are meant for planting, some are meant for waiting. Sometimes you've got to dig it all up and start all over again. There are seasons of harvest, but not every single bit of effort needs to be productivity, needs to be obsessed with producing something to be valuable. There is value in the journey. There's value in the growth process. And so one of the other things that I've thought about, in addition to this idea of farming versus fishing, I'm actually reading a book right now called Tiny Experiments. It's amazing so far. So I'm just in the early stages of it, but I'll talk more about that as I go through the book. But one of the things that I really love about it is this idea of taking everything as a little experiment, right? And this is where things get really exciting for me, because farming, this idea of the farming mindset isn't just about patience, isn't just about delayed gratification and waiting. It's also about experimentation, isn't it? Because farmers, as far as I'm aware, don't just plant one crop and think, well, this is it. This is it. I'm going to put all of my eggs into this one basket. They diversify. They try new things. They adapt to changing conditions and seasons. They're adaptable. They learn from experience. They're resilient. And as scholarly mamas, we too can take this same kind of experimental approach to our lives. Maybe you're trying a new routine with your writing, or maybe you're trying something different in terms of productivity. Maybe you're introducing a new way of connecting with a child that you haven't tried before. Maybe you're introducing a new way of building connection with your kids. Maybe you want to see how that will change or shape your relationship, or see how they will respond. Maybe you are embarking on a brand new, some kind of, creative new project or some new interest without this expectation of immediate results, immediate success, right? Giving things time to take root, to see whether you even want to pursue that. Some things will thrive, some things won't thrive, but that's okay, because the whole value in all of this is to plant, to tend, to trust, and to give time, because something beautiful can still grow, right? But it needs all of those ingredients. And so as I bring this episode to a close, I want you to think about reframing success. What does success mean to you? Is the definition of success that you have based on the definitions that have been handed to you? Maybe you've got parents who expect certain things of you, and therefore that's, your idea of success is living up to those expectations. Are you fishing for immediate results? Are you looking for the quick wins and the, overnight success? Or are you farming for longer term growth? Are you obsessed with the outputs of this journey, or are you invested in the outcomes? Are you chasing external validation, or are you investing in your own deep and sustainable growth? I believe that we can all start sowing new seeds today. Even if you've taken that fisherman's mindset before, it doesn't mean you can't change that. Let's experiment, let's nurture, let's trust that even when we cannot see that things are happening, even when we can't see the results, that we can trust that the work that we are putting in is laying the foundation for something amazing. That we are investing in our future, that we are setting the tone for amazing things and being open to this new mindset of abundance. Let us begin doing that today. I really thank you for joining me today on this podcast. I know my voice is not voicing today. It's been not voicing for a few days now, but I am so happy that you are able to join me. I hope this episode resonated with you. I love you for being here, and I'd love for you to share this with another scholarly mama you know. But remember that growth takes time. It takes intention. It takes, really being experimental, but being patient and being intentional. So keep planting, because your harvest will eventually come, because these are your journeys of becoming. So until next time, Mama, I'm sending you lots of love and gratitude. I hope you got something useful out of this episode. I know that it's one way of getting this message out there and being able to help and meet amazing mamas like yourself. And before I go, I wanted to remind you that Scholarly Mamas OPT begins on the 3rd of April. So if you're interested in signing up, make sure you head over to opt.scholarlymamas.com. I can't wait to see you inside our new program. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on all the ways that we can work together to transform your journey of scholarly motherhood from one of overwhelm, disillusionment and burnout to one of scholarly joy and purposeful success. Make sure you head over to mrsmummyphd.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. I cannot wait to work with you. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.